This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Kansas Farm Service Agency Farm Loan Chief Josh Ritter kicks off today's show by discussing the Down Payment Farm Ownership Program, which is under the Direct Farm Ownership Program at FSA. Continuing the show is K-State Wheat Production Specialist Romulo Lollato and Director of Commodities at Kansas Farm Bureau Mark Nelson as they preview the upcoming Alfalfa School. Part of the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast concludes the show for today. K-State's Brad White, Bob Larson, and Bob Weaber talk about the benefits of crossbreeding cattle. That and more is coming up ahead on Agriculture Today. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Wednesday show with some information from the Farm Service Agency. And this week we're joined by Kansas Farm Service Agency Farm Loan Chief Josh Ritter. Josh, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Josh, previously on Agriculture Today, we've talked about some different Farm Service Agency direct farm ownership loans. However, today, wanting to talk more specifically about a loan type available under FSA's Direct Farm Ownership Program.
Yeah, that's correct. I'd like to talk about our Down Payment Farm Ownership Program, or FO program, today, and give a little more details about that. That down payment program, under that program, loan funds can be used to partially finance the purchase of a family farm by an eligible beginning farmer, socially disadvantaged farmer, or veteran farmer. And under the program, the applicant's going to have to provide a 5% cash down payment. FSA will provide up to 45% of the financing, and then the commercial lender will finance the remaining 50% of that.
And Josh, you mentioned a beginning farmer, socially disadvantaged farmer, or veteran farmer. And so what are the definitions, or how are those defined by Farm Service Agency?
Sure, yeah. And under our regulations, I'll start with the beginning farmer. And a beginning farmer is an individual or entity who has not operated a farm for more than 10 years, substantially participates in the farm operation. For farm ownership type loans or real estate loans, they cannot own a farm greater than 30% of the average size in the county at the time of the application. And if the applicant is an entity, then all members must be related by blood or marriage, and all entity members must be eligible beginning farmers. Moving on to the socially disadvantaged farmer group, that's an individual or entity who is a member of a socially disadvantaged group, which is a group whose members have been subject to prejudice because of their identity as members of a group without regard to their individual qualities. And that group, under our regulations, consists of American Indians or Alaskan Natives, Asians, African Americans, Native Hawaiians, or other Pacific Islanders, Hispanics, and women. And then last but certainly not least, a veteran farmer, which is a new group that's now eligible for this program. But under our regulations, a veteran farmer is a farmer who has served in the armed forces, who has not operated a farm, or has operated a farm for not more than 10 years, or is a veteran who served in active military and first obtained status as a veteran during the most recent 10-year period. So basically, breaking that down to meet the definition of a veteran farmer for FSA purposes, the applicant needs to be a veteran that has operated a farm for less than 10 years or received their veteran status within the past 10 years.
And as we're talking about the beginning farmer, so it could be a couple who are both beginning farmers are able to go in together to buy a farm?
Correct, yes. As long as everybody in the entity or applying meets the definition, then they'll all be eligible for the program.
You mentioned having a down payment requirement, and so could you go a little bit more in depth and also explain the maximum loan amounts available under this program?
Sure. First, under the down payment program, the applicant does have to provide a minimum down payment of 5% of the purchase of the farm, and that has to be provided in cash. So it has to be cash they have on hand. They can't borrow for that money. That 5% just has to be assets they have on hand. And then regarding the loan amounts available, our maximum loan amount under this program is not going to exceed 45% of the lesser of the purchase price or the appraised value of the farm to be acquired, or $667,000. The weird thing is, that's a regulation thing that tried to mirror what our maximum loan amount was at the time the program was introduced, which was $300,000. So this makes the maximum loan amount of this program $300,150. So even though our farm ownership maximum loan amount has been increased by regulations to $600,000, under this specific program, you're still stuck at $300,150 or less. So just kind of a weird government regulation thing, I guess, more than anything.
Is there anything else you'd like to add when it comes to that?
Our FSA's financing combined with the lender participating in the purchase cannot exceed 95% of the purchase price. So just something to keep in mind there, that it has to, we can't exceed that. So.
And what are those terms and rates available under the down payment program?
Yeah, the interest rate for the down payment program is the regular direct farm ownership rate minus 4%, but in no case will it be less than 1.5%. So there's kind of a floor there of 1.5%. But right now, our interest rate for our direct farm ownership program is 5.875%. So the interest rate for the down payment FO loan is 1.875%. Under this program, our repayment terms cannot exceed 20 years. The repayment term can be less than 20 years if requested by the applicant, but outside of that, a 20-year payment is going to be what's used. And on the commercial side of things, the lender's free to set their own rates and terms for their portion of the financing. However, there are some restrictions on the repayment terms for the commercial loan. The financing provided by the participating lender must have an amortization period of at least 30 years and cannot have a balloon payment due within the first 20 years of the loan. So I think the idea behind limiting the ability to have a balloon payment within that first 20 years is to allow the applicant to pay off FSA's portion of the financing prior to any balloon payments hitting, so we can get that paid down for people.
And so what is the security for down payment loans?
Yeah, under this program, FSA's loan is going to be secured by a lien on the property being purchased with the loan funds, and our mortgage is going to be junior to the lender financing the balance of the purchase. So that means FSA is going to file a second mortgage on the property being purchased behind that participating lender's first mortgage. The advantage of the down payment program is that FSA is not required to take a lien on any additional security. So as long as our loan is 100% secured by the property being purchased, we're not going to take a lien or mortgage on any other assets owned by the applicant.
For producers who are looking into the down payment loan, what is the first step for maybe getting going on this?
Yeah, I'd recommend they start with their local FSA Service Center. We do have 21 FSA farm loan program sites in Kansas. So if your local office doesn't administer the program, they'll be able to get you the contact information for the FLP site that you're going to need to work with on your application process. And just some additional information on FSA loan programs can also be found by visiting www.farmers.gov and clicking on the loans heading on the banner at the top of the page in case somebody wants to go online and look it up.
So just reminding producers and people that there are more loans from the Farm Service Agency than just the down payment loan.
Correct, yeah, and that's a good place to kind of search for those too.
Josh, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today and share with us some information about this FSA loan.
All right, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
That was Kansas Farm Service Agency Farm Loan Chief Josh Ritter, and he was talking about FSA's Down Payment Farm Ownership Program. If you'd like to learn more information about this program, you can do so by going to www.farmers.gov, and on that website there is a tab titled Loans. You can also go to your local FSA Service Center. If you don't know where one is in location to you, you can also find that by going to www.farmers.gov and in the upper right-hand corner, clicking on Service Centers. I will link all that in today's show notes on agtoday.net. Before we cut to a break, we're now going to be joined by Gary Crawford from the USDA and USDA veterinarian Dr. Dawn Fitzhugh as she discusses severe cold and how it can be dangerous for people, but also their pets.
Anyone who knows me also knows I hate cold winter weather, but actually with the severe cold waves that we've had across the country recently, maybe I should flip that around again and say we need to keep our dogs warm.
Just like cold can be dangerous for us, it absolutely can be for them too, even the winter hardy breeds.
That's Dr. Dawn Fitzhugh. She's a U.S. Department of Agriculture veterinarian. She says many people think dogs are not very sensitive to cold conditions. Wrong.
They are absolutely susceptible to the cold,
especially when combined with wind and snow and ice. Dawn says you hear about people getting frostbite, but animals also can suffer from it, even though you'd think that could not happen.
So even the furriest of animals, that wind comes along and it can separate their hair and get right down to their skin and make them feel super chilled. And so the wind chill can be dangerous for them, just like it is for us.
And where on the animal is frostbite most likely to show up?
Dogs and cats with the tips of their ears. That's a really vulnerable area for them. So what happens is as they get cold is like their veins constrict And so it decreases blood flow to tips of body parts. So think about like us and how the tips of your fingers get really cold and painful. It happens like that to them with their ears. And like tips of tails, tips of toes, things like that can be really vulnerable to the cold.
Now, here's another problem that can crop up when we take dogs out for walks in icy conditions.
They have fur between their paw pads. And so some of them can get ice chunked up in there, and that can be really painful for them. So if you're outside walking with your dog and suddenly, your dog looks like, I don't really want to go because things are hurting me, it's really worth picking up their paws and taking a look in there and seeing what's going on, because it's absolutely possible they might have some icy chunks going on in there.
Or a reluctance to walk or move may also indicate that the dog is just too cold, maybe even suffering from the first signs of hypothermia, especially if the dog is shivering.
That would be a sign for sure of like, I probably need to get them inside and get them warmer.
But Fitzhugh says warm them gradually. Don't put them suddenly in front of a heater. That would be too big a shock for the dog. So in general, Dr. Fitzhugh says keep an eye on your pet for any unusual behavior in this weather. Try to limit the amount of time spent out in that cold. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Once again, that was U.S. Department of Agriculture's Gary Crawford, and he was joined by U.S. Department of Agriculture's veterinarian Dr. Don Fitzhugh as they were discussing how cold weather can be dangerous for people, but also their pets. We're cutting to a short break now on Agriculture Today, but stick around because when we come back, we'll be joined by Romulo Lollato and Mark Nelson to discuss the upcoming Alfalfa School. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing the 2024 Alfalfa School. And to talk about it, we're joined by K-State Wheat Production Specialist Romulo Lollato and Director of Commodities at Kansas Farm Bureau, Mark Nelson. Mark, Romulo, thank you both so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby.
Mark, starting off with you, this is a joint effort between the Kansas Grassland and Forage Council and K-State Research and Extension. And so since we kind of know what K-State Research and Extension is, what is the Kansas Grassland and Forage Council?
Kansas Forage and Grassland Council has been around for a while. It was organized in 1988, really. And essentially the goal is to provide forage education and programs in Kansas. And pretty much ever since then, we've been trying to do those kind of things. We kind of like to think of ourselves as a family of farmers, ranchers, university-based research, extension professionals, agency personnel, but basically all united because we appreciate that truly vital role that forages play, not only in Kansas, our economy, but also our landscape. And so, we'll do rangeland things, but also various forage crop education work.
Romulo, can you tell us a little bit about what is the Alfalfa School for 2024?
Yeah, so I guess discussing this with Mark and a few other folks as well, county agents like Alicia Bohr and others, we kind of identified the need to having an alfalfa school around the state, right? And we're kind of giving this a try as an initial school that I guess we haven't done one in a while, and so it made complete sense to do it together between KSRE and the Kansas Grassland and Forage Council. So our idea here is to give alfalfa growers kind of like a refresher on many topics that may be on their mind. Most of these topics related to the crop production aspect itself, but some of them related to crop usage later on. So we discussed quite a bit where would be an ideal location to do these. And so we end up starting or at least kicking off these, which can become a series of meetings in the future. But we wanted to do this first try and see how things go in Great Bend, right? So actually this Alfalfa School is going to go on Tuesday, February 13th in Great Bend. And we're going to start it at 8:30 a.m. and run through around 3 p.m. or so. So it's kind of like not really a full day, but a good part of a work day there on that Tuesday, February 13th. And as I mentioned before, we're going to have a number of different talks and covering different things here that alfalfa growers might actually be concerned. So kicking off the program there kind of in the morning, of course, as growers get there will be some coffee and donuts and things like these waiting for them, right? Just to warm them up in what may be a pretty cold morning. But of course, one of the things that is paramount on alfalfa growers' minds is insect control, right? So what pests are important for alfalfa and how do we control them? And to cover that for us, we have Anthony Zukoff. So Anthony, he's an extension associate, and he is based out of Garden City in our Research and Extension Center out there. And he will be covering, again, what are the major pests in alfalfa that can cause economic damage there to the crop? What are some of the threshold infestation levels for pest control for each of them? And then how do we get it done, right? Both chemical and perhaps some biological pest control strategies there as well. And if you are a certified crop advisor, we will be offering many continuing education units in this program, 5 to be more precise. And this one will have a pest management and a 1A continuing education units there for Anthony's talk early in the morning. I will then follow up with from Andrew's talk, and right now I'm planning on covering some management practices for high-yielding alfalfa. And so essentially what I'll be covering there will be what are some recent research that we have out of K-State, and these will cover both what alfalfa growers are doing now in their commercial fields, as well as some of the small plot research that we have done. So both covering like a survey work as well as a small plot research of alfalfa varieties and their interaction with management practices. So we're covering kind of like some Roundup ready varieties and low lignin varieties and just comparing them with conventional varieties as well. And finally, I'm also going to cover some related to how far can we push in terms of water use efficiency for alfalfa, right? What's our yield potential kind of across the states based on water availability. And that talk will be offering a crop production credit, right? Those CCAs, continuing education units. Following up my talk there, we have Dr. John Hallman. He is an agronomist out in Garden City as well, Research and Extension Center. And John Hallman and a master student from his program, Nick Datter, they will both kind of work together on a soil water credit. So their talk is going to be offering a soil water credit. And they will cover essentially alfalfa management both under irrigation and under drought conditions, right? So I think for the last couple of years or so, and Mark is here as a witness, but how many times have we gotten questions from growers in terms of how do we manage alfalfa under drought, right? Should we cut it once again? Should we just let it grow? And so John Holman is going to cover that. So how do we manage alfalfa under those such dry conditions? But he's also going to cover a lot of results that they have on best irrigation management practices for maxing out alfalfa yields and net return there. And finally, his master student, Nick Datter, is going to cover water use efficiency of some alternative legumes in southwest Kansas. So legumes and other forages. So they have been doing a number of variety trials with not only legumes, but kind of like summer forages. Nick is going to cover some results from the last few years here on those type of forage variety trials. Then I think that we break for lunch at that point in time. There will be a pretty nice lunch offered, so I wouldn't miss that. and then we get back for couple of different sessions there after lunch. One of them is going to be alfalfa fertility management. So Dr. Dorivar Ruiz-Diaz here from the main campus is going to cover different aspects of nutrient management in alfalfa, such as like a crop nutrient removal and crop nutrient needs, management of phosphorus, fertilizer, potassium, sulfur, and other important nutrients for high-yielding alfalfa. So again, a general nutrient management topic there, timing of application, sources, anything is game there, and that talk is going to be offered. We're going to be offering a nutrient management credit. And then wrapping up the talk piece of the program, we'll have alfalfa use in the beef industry by Dr. Justin Wagner. So here he's going to cover many aspects of post-harvest alfalfa usage in the beef industry, like usage in cow-calf operations, usage in beef cattle growing operations, and usage in feedlots, as well as time trends in alfalfa quality in Kansas. So a very interesting program there. And then, Mark, maybe you can help us here, but then we're going to wrap up the program actually with an industry panel. And Mark could probably expand a little bit there on what we can expect from that industry panel.
You bet. It's going to be a kind of a nice and varied one in the sense that we're going to have a couple of folks that would actually be people that would be able to provide you information about the varieties that they sell and how to get those varieties, what it's going to cost this coming year, some of the new things that they see from a technology standpoint that might be coming down the pike as far as some of these new alfalfa varieties. But then we're also going to have Brad Hiss with the dehydrator plant out there in Great Bend, which is in the process of increasing in size and expanding and again, creating more demand for alfalfa. So we're going to have some folks who say the seed, help you grow it, and then we're also going to have some folks that will help you buy that alfalfa you might grow.
And Mark, what does registration look like for people who would like to attend?
Absolutely, because we are a membership organization. Kansas Forage and Grassland Council, we do have a membership cost, and that's $45. And that's how this program is going to work. Basically, for members, it is free. So for anyone who goes online, joins Kansas Forage and Grassland Council, you'll come in, you'll be free to get in. If not, come anyway. Please, we want everyone to come and show up. We'll take your money then. It is $45. That will, in part, pay for that meal. That it will also make you a member of the Kansas Forage and Grassland Council. And I think it's important to keep in mind that really it's not just a family of Kansas forage enthusiasts, but it's also when you join Kansas Forage and Grassland Council, you're also a member of the American Forage and Grassland Council. So you'll get their information, their newsletters, along with our own newsletters. And so you get a lot of specific information aimed at forage growers. And so I really feel like, that will be a good value. But yeah, we'll be able to take cards or cash or however you might want to pay at that door. But there is going to be a bit of a fee to get in. But again, part of that's just helping to pay to put this kind of a program on. And for people, when do you ask that they get RSVP'd by, if possible?
Well, so if possible, we're asking that they RSVP by February 7th. Right, so that's roughly about a week there before the actual program takes place. And that's mostly for us to have an idea of head count, right? Of course, as Mark mentioned, we're welcoming walk-ins as well. But if you can plan ahead, put on your calendar there and kind of let us know that you're planning to be there, that really helps, at least with head counts and actually planning for the catering of the event.
That was K-State Wheat Production Specialist Romulo Lollato, and he was joined by Director of Commodities at Kansas Farm Bureau, Mark Nelson, discussing the upcoming Alfalfa School on February 13th in Great Bend, Kansas. They do ask that you RSVP by Wednesday, February 7th by calling 620-793-1910 or emailing aboor@ksu.edu. I will link more information about this school in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be back with more ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Wednesday show with some audio from K-State's Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast. Today, we're joined by K-State's Brad White, Bob Larson, and Bob Weaver as they discuss crossbreeding.
We had another listener question, and this question is relative to crossbreeding. And I think this is a great question because many people will encounter this. We've talked before, and Bob, you've even told us before about how we want to have a crossbreeding program. We may want to have English and Continental. We want to have a couple breeds because we want to take advantage of heterosis. And Bob, you've mentioned heterosis is an important trait, especially for things that are lowly heritable like repro. So other Bob. Yeah. Bob and other Bob. So this question is, as a commercial cow-calf, I switch back and forth between two breeds of bulls. Each breed is used a few years, then I switch to the other breed. I retain all my own females. Am I getting benefit from heterosis as I continue to use these increasingly crossed females?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the short answer is yes, you are getting benefit of particularly maternal heterosis. You're getting some individual calf heterosis as well, but maternal heterosis is worth, in today's market, somewhere probably in the $100 to $150 a cow per year range in terms of added value to the system, and so it's worth paying attention to. And so it's a great question.
Why is it worth that?
Yeah, the primary advantages of maternal heterosis are extended lifetime productivity. So crossbred cows last longer in the production system than straight-bred cows do. There's lots of data on this particular topic. And they produce basically an additional calf in their lifetime. That length of productive life is extended, and it's principally extended. There's some health benefits, animal health components and so forth that are included in there. But the primary one is reproductive fitness. Those cows reproduce better, keeping them
a little more fertile.
Yep, they're a little more fertile than straight-bred cows.
But they're a little more fertile.
They're a little more fertile. And so, having another calf every year decreases replacement female costs, adds additional revenue stream because you sell that that heifer that would have been a replacement into the marketing channel. So there's lots of economic advantage from the maternal heterosis side. And so the listener's question was, this bull rotation thing, and that's what we would call a two-breed rotation in time. So you use a set of bulls for a period of time and then rotate them out to another breed. That's a two-breed rotation in time. And in a two-breed rotation in time, the literature estimates say between somewhere at 50 to say half to 2/3 of the heterosis that an F1 cow would express. So you're capturing a pretty big chunk of it, not as much as if you had true F1 cows, but certainly a fairly simplistic system that allows you to capture a pretty sizable chunk of maternal heterosis. Incidentally, it's about the same amount as if you used F1 bulls and kept them. So you had F1 cows made into F1 bulls, or half and half breed composition. Produces about half the heterosis of the F1. So. Yep.
And you've got some calculators or online tools if people are interested in this.
So there's, and excuse the self-promotion, but there's a good resource. It's in the Beef Sire Selection Manual. So if you just go Google that, Beef Sire Selection Manual, it's available at ebeef.org. And the particular table I'm looking at, it's table 7 on page 33 of that document. And it's got all kinds of different breeding systems and how much retained heterosis that you get out of those particular breeding systems.
Excellent. And we will put that link in the show notes. Thanks for that. I think that was a great question.
Once again, that was Brad White, Bob Larson, and Bob Weber on the Beef Cattle Institute's Cattle Chat podcast. I will also link the resources that Bob Weber mentioned in today's show notes on agtoday.net. Also in the show notes will be a link if you'd like to listen to the full Cattle Chat podcast that came out on January 19th, titled Building Your Own Herd, Crossbreeding, and BMR Corn Silage. You can also find it by going to their website, ksubci.org. Again, that is ksubci.org, or by finding the Cattle Chat podcast on your favorite podcast streaming platform. That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you tomorrow.